Ladies and gentlemen, boys and girls, Diane Time is here. That's right, we're talking about Scream 2022 on the season finale of Kill by Kill. Greetings and salutations, Internet. It's your old pal, Patrick Hamilton, coming to you once again from Woodsboro. This is the Kill by Kill podcast, where we're dedicated to celebrating the least discussed component of any horror film, the characters. Now we're going to unpack all the goriest of details of 2022's Scream in the hopes that a requel's victim's untimely end is just the beginning of the jokes that we might make at their expense. And as always, there is only one person I trust that if I go down to the basement, she won't go with me. The one, the only, Gina Radcliffe. How are you doing today, Gina?
That's a filthy, filthy lie. I would go with you. I don't know if I'd go ahead of you.
Right.
But I'd go with you. I would try to figure out a way we could, squeeze in side by side on the stairs.
Sure. Take it together 2 by 2.
And that way, when the killer comes for us, we'll comically be stuck flailing around trying to get past the other one to get back up the stairs.
Gina, we would be stuck comically flailing around regardless of where we are in any individual house.
It just turns into a Laurel and Hardy sketch in which the gag is both of us are regular sized people. just clumsy.
Yes, awkward. I have arthritis in my knees. Although I found that I've been running a lot faster these days, so that's something to be said for it. So before we go too far, right, this is one of those things where a movie has been released, and obviously our main franchise for this season has been Scream. We didn't plan on it. It just happened that way. And then lo and behold, when it did, they announced that this movie would be coming out. So it was serendipitous. But for a variety of reasons, including the fact that we are still in a pandemic, not everyone has seen this particular film. So before we get into the meat of it, why don't we do a quick non-spoiler section where we give our general reactions to this motion picture?
Sounds good to me.
All right. So on your first impression scale, how much did you enjoy or not Scream?
I liked it a lot. I think it stuck the landing in a way. A lot of, I really don't like the word requel. But,
no, that's a swing and a miss.
I will not adopt that in any possible way.
Yeah.
It's a sequel.
Yes.
As far as present day reboots, sequels, whatever you want to call them, I think this is probably you head and neck above Halloween, and then the remakes of Friday the 13th and Nightmare on Elm Street. I think it is far surpassed any of those.
Yeah, I think the league that this is kind of the pool that it's playing in is that sort of Halloween thing, and it's also the sort of Candyman could be placed into that category as well. And this might, for my money, was the most successful of them all. Now, Scream always has the advantage that it has legacy characters are constantly involved, and most slashers do not have repeat characters. Unless it's the villain. That's the main repeating character. So Scream has the advantage that it's always kind of played in this particular ball field, as it were. But I agree with you. It sticks the landing. It creates new characters that I really enjoyed watching. And it used my expectations against me to create suspenseful sequences. And I think it was exceptionally well directed. And the young cast are fantastic. Honestly,
there
weren't a lot of bum performances to be found amongst them.
No. And one thing that I feel is very important to point out about this movie is, and this is something I pointed out as a problem for me with other reboots and sequels that come long after the fact, is the people that made this movie really like these movies.
Yes. Yeah. And understand their rhythms and aren't looking to, they aren't looking to tell you that you're stupid.
Right.
First of all, and the while some things are twisted around, they're not done so to go, aren't you a dummy for thinking this? It's more along the lines of, this has always been a twisty, a whodunit, and trying to manipulate you in one way or the other is really part and parcel of what Scream is all about.
Right.
So I didn't, I didn't feel overly manipulated or, I don't know. There was a lot going on for this, and I think they nailed a lot of those Scream 1 type of suspense sequences. I don't know that any of them reached the level of Scream 2, but of course, that was a slightly different pitched movie. And I don't know that I'm ever going to get that again. I don't know that everyone's going to try to deliver that again. But here, I felt like these were well paced. They were deliberate. The direction was purposeful. They knew what they were doing. And they had very game actors who could play along with all this stuff. It was really fucking fun.
It was a lot of fun. Yeah, fun would be a good word for it. Like, not to you beat the dead horse that is Halloween Kills at this point, right. But I didn't have fun watching that movie.
Yes, it was plenty gory. Like if you're going for gore,
and it was, I guess it was exciting enough. I mean, there was a lot of action in it and all, but none of it was enjoyable. I mean, there was only one moment in this movie where I was like, well, that's a bummer, but it had to do with a character getting killed off. Not so much like, oh, this movie is a drag, or, why is this movie trying to be so, why is it trying to say something that it doesn't need to say? And I think it just did the whole reboot thing so much better.
Yeah. It just felt a piece with the rest of the franchise. It didn't feel forced to me. That was the thing I was going to be worried about was, does this feel like there's like shoving another attempt at this sort of down my throat sort of deal where I'm not connected to the characters and I don't feel the plot, That's when I think a lot, it starts to feel like, there's a lot of sitting down time where I could be doing other things. I never felt that once in this movie.
Yeah, and there was no sense of, well, this ain't your daddy's Scream.
No, exactly.
Like one of the problems that with Halloween and Friday the 13th in particular is, they're trying for this very sort of, slick, updated look to everything and feel, and this just feels like a Scream movie.
Yes. Yeah, there are artistic flashes that feel out of place with it, nor does it feel like Radio Silence are simply cloning Wes Craven's style. Right. They have their own thing going on here. It's just that they've adapted the way they direct a movie to the Scream franchise rather than dragging Scream out of it and unmooring you and giving you that, as you so eloquently said, that not your daddy's feeling. I'm not a fan of that. No. I know some people are. They feel the need that everything must be shaken up. And it's like, well, that's not really the point of a Scream movie, everyone. This does not feel like it's only playing to fans and not delivering you a fun film, but it's also not abandoning continuity just for the sake of fucking doing it either.
Right, exactly.
So with that being said, this is where, if you do not want to be spoiled about Scream, and of course, it's not really how things happen. It's not really what happens. It's how it happens, as the parlance goes. But if you want to pause here and come back to us after you've seen the film, that's fine. If you want to stop here, erase this and then re-download it, 3, 4, 5 more times just for fun, you can do that as well. We're not going to stop you or tell you how to listen to a podcast. That being said, we will begin our spoiler discussion after this. So this is where you might want to pull your chute. So that being said, I am surprised how much I like Jack Quaid. He should be a person that I dislike, and I find him intensely nice and watchable on screen.
Like you talking about in general or
yeah, in general, and in particular in this movie. Becky turned to me and goes, "Who is that?" I go, "That's Jack Quaid. That's Dennis Quaid and Meg Ryan's kid." And she's like, "Oh." I'm like,
what else is he? What else might have seen him in?
Well, I think The Boys is his big thing that has been happening there for a while. And then in addition to that, as everyone yells into their phone,
I could have looked it up. I could have looked it up myself.
Right.
You know.
He, is a little bit in Logan Lucky. He pops up for a bit in that. He was in Rampage, that The Rock and his giant white gorilla friend stop giant animals. He's been in this and that, but I think the big one that people know him a lot from right now is The Boys. And he's the main voice on Star Trek Lower Decks, but obviously that's not a face thing.
I have seen none of those things, so for all I know, that this is the first time I've seen him in anything. I mean, I've heard of him, but I don't know that I have seen them. And it's so funny because I spent much of the movie thinking, "Wow, he really looks like what's his face from Dawson's Creek."
Yeah, that's what Becky says. Like, is this a Dawson's Creek person?
And then I thought, he kind of looks a little bit like Matthew Lillard. And so I will say, and this is the first big spoiler. So again, if you are listening and you haven't seen it, do not blame us for spoiling you. You were warned.
Yes, you were.
I kind of pegged him as one of the killers pretty early on. And I will tell you, the main reason was because they really pushed hard the whole, he never heard of this, he never saw the movies, he didn't know anything about the true life crimes. It wasn't implausible that he wouldn't know anything about this, but at the same time, it's like, okay, there's a reason why it's very important that this is pointed out. Right. That he doesn't know that he's claiming, at least, that he doesn't know about any of this. Like, there's a couple scenes where he's like, watching the movies on Netflix and basically just trying to catch up on everything, or so he claims.
Yeah.
But also at the same time, I'm like, gosh, he looks a lot like Matthew Lillard. Is this going to be some sort of like, both Billy and Stu have secret children? And I'm like, that'll be pushing it a little bit.
Yeah.
But still, like, I couldn't shake that was a possible reason to think he might be the killer. And then it turned out the first reason was the one that was correct.
Yeah. I also kept my eye on him because boyfriends in the Scream franchise, you got to be on the lookout out for them.
Except for poor Jerry O'Connell.
Yes.
Jerry O'Connell was clean as a whistle. He did nothing. Jerry O'Connell innocent.
T-shirts. Jerry O'Connell innocent. Coming up to TeePublic right after this is over. But when he started watching them obsessively, that became a thing. That's when I was like, oh, he's the audience surrogate. The thing I could not have seen coming was the whole, I'm going to see Billy in the reflection and talk to him.
But that twist in it was kept under some hats.
Oh yeah. And well done. Good for them.
I mean, what had to obviously be CGI was pretty good.
I agree. It's a weird thing where de-aging seems to work better for some people and not for others. It definitely can be very janky, but what they did well was they kept him in sort of one position with
and it was a mirror image, which would, you could forgive that for being a little off, a little blurry, whatever you want to, however you want to describe it.
And they never pretend like he's real either.
But I mean, it looked pretty real, and it didn't have that creepy dead eye thing that a lot of de-aging and CG of actual living human beings. What happens when they try to do that.
Yeah. I found the sort of reversal of the opening kill element to be pretty awesome. I really enjoyed that opening because I'm expecting one thing, I'm getting something else, but it's not like it isn't brutal, and it isn't like it isn't really a tough scene to get through. And boy, if if this girl does not become the biggest fucking star in the world, I just don't know. Between this and West Side Story, she is pretty fucking amazing.
I gotta say, I was a little startled when they said she was still alive.
Yes, I agree with you.
Like, what?
The fuck you say now?
I mean, the minute someone just would have stomped on my leg hard enough to break it, I just would have well, goodbye. Just die of shock right then and there. And he put the knife through her hand.
Yeah. Oh, that was fucking insane.
And somehow she's still alive, and then takes another beating at the hospital and still survives after that. This girl looks like she weighs about 90 pounds soaking wet.
It's not the girl from West Side Story. I thought it was. It's a completely different girl. My apologies to her. I was like, she looks like a baby compared to West Side Story because it's a completely different fucking person.
And she is a baby. She's like 19, I think.
Yes. Oh my God. She's a frail little thing, but it's totally working. I guess she's going to be in that upcoming movie X from Ty West. So, and then she looks entirely different in that as well.
Yeah, she's great. She's great. I don't know what people are talking about with the other protagonist, Melissa Barrera. I don't know what people are talking about, that she's kind of wooden. I completely bought their relationship. I thought some of the best moments were just the two of them trying to hash out their differences.
Who the fuck is saying that Melissa Barrera was wooden? What fucking movie were they watching?
People always had to find something to shit on with these movies.
They're fucking out to goddamn lunch. She's great in this.
The thing is great. The thing that also I think that people are a little taken aback and maybe disappointed by. Mm-hmm. It was neither here nor there for me, is that the original trio is not actually in it that much. I'm
okay with that.
I'm okay with it too. They're in it for about a third of the movie, maybe.
Yes. Yeah. Yes. They portion out what they're doing better, but it's not like Gale and Sidney start the movie inside Woodsboro and then just suddenly appear. They are in completely different spaces, and they're kind of dragged back into it. Like they're like moths to the flame. They kind of can't help themselves. But the movie, for once, isn't entirely about Sidney Prescott. It's almost as if time has slightly passed Sidney Prescott by. And if she hadn't inserted herself, she would not have necessarily needed to be involved. It's less about Sidney Prescott and her mother's amazing sleeping around abilities that is the starting point here. This is almost entirely about the stab movies rather than her, which I found an interesting departure while still keeping within the vein of Scream.
Right. I mean, she originally has no intention of coming back to Woodsboro after this first attack happens. And the only reason she comes back is because, once again, this is a huge spoiler, is because Dewey is killed.
Yeah.
I regrettably, Patrick, he does not get to die peacefully in his sleep.
He does not. He truly, really does not get to die peacefully in his sleep. But I found his exit from that elevator. At that point, I know that guy's dying, but I found his way out to be cathartic in a lot of ways. Like, there's a redemptive arc to Dewey within this movie.
Well, he was always going to be a hero.
Yes. And he finds a way to do it that's interesting, and it's revelatory to the plot. It's not just superfluous. They're not just getting rid of him to get rid of him either. There's a point to it all.
Well, I sort of feel like his part of the story had come to its natural conclusion. Things didn't work out between him and Gale, which we knew that was going to happen. Right. He, against his own better interests, and even his own, he doesn't really understand it himself. He still insists on remaining in Woodsboro, even though he's been forced to retire. It's never explained why he's forced to retire. And he just, living in a trailer and, spending most of his day just watching Gale on TV. And just, he was broken. And, he got to go out a hero. And I think there comes a certain point where if again Dewey got stabbed like 17 times or got clobbered in the head, it just would go beyond any sort of reasonable plausibility at that point. I mean, sooner or later his body's had to give out.
Yeah. And I think he's obviously, so I think the sheriff thing, you can feel like, okay, he's self-medicating with alcohol.
Right.
Because he's in a whole lot of pain. He's not really truly aware of a lot of things. We can kind of glean that when he takes out a rotten piece of chicken out of the refrigerator and takes a giant bite out of it. He's not 100% there necessarily. And I think he feels compelled to, he's just, he's broken. He is broken.
Yeah. So I think of the three, I don't like to use the phrase his would have made the most sense. But there's nothing more they can do. As much as I love this character, and I said in our Q&A episode that he was my favorite character of the original trio, but at this point, there's simply nothing more you can do with him as a character.
Yeah. Yes. There's an arc to him that feels like it's heading to a completion point. And I think it's also, they really give Courtney Cox and Gale Weathers an interesting opportunity to, I don't think she has to justify her existence, but this does justify her existence in the movie, in that she can at one point go, "You killed my best friend." And that feels real. It doesn't feel fake. It doesn't feel like acting. It feels like you're peeling back a layer and going, listen, we were many things together, but at the end of the day, we were friends, and I'm not accepting this. And you took something away from me, and it feels real and powerful. And there were a lot of elements to that where relationships felt real and connected. And there wasn't as much of a meta jokey element to it. It dialed back a little bit on the Kevin Williamson element of it. Not that I'm not a fan of that. I absolutely am. It felt a little realer.
Yeah,
the connections.
I would say the only character that kind of comes off as sort of quippy and bordering on comic relief is actually my favorite character. My favorite of the new characters, which is Mindy.
Yes.
Who is her and her twin brother are somehow Randy's niece and nephew.
Well, I don't know that it's somehow.
I do not know what male model Martha Meeks married at some point had children with to have these like gorgeous mixed race children.
I mean, she found
she landed Woodsboro's hunk of the year, man. I'll tell you. We don't ever see him. I mean, it never clarifies if he's no longer in the picture, but holy moly, go Martha.
Yes. Yeah, 100%.
She got herself a slice of prime beef right there. Like Idris Elba is going to show up as their dad the next one or something. But yeah, so Mindy is sort of the like queer female version of Randy. She's very into horror movies and very much into her legacy as being Randy Meeks' niece. And then this actress, Jasmin Savoy Brown, she's amazing. She stars in the current obsession of mine called Yellow Jackets.
Yes, and certainly our end of Twitter is all in on Yellow Jackets.
Yeah, it's if you are into horror in any sort of fashion, watch Yellow Jackets. It's real fucking creepy. She was in, speaking of real fucking creepy, she was that in season 2 and the beginning of season 3 of The Leftovers, another show
another Gina
rave
show
about.
du jour.
Yes. Yeah. But she is just a wonderful actress who I think we're just going to be seeing all kinds of amazing things from. And she's so funny here.
Yeah, no, she's delightful and buoyant, and the camera loves her, and she feels very real and a piece of everything that's happening. And I was wavering a little bit on Mason Gooding, who's playing her brother, until the scene in which he is making out with his girlfriend on the couch. And this comes immediately after he kind of laments Wes by Dylan Minnette. He goes, "You good-looking motherfucker." And then the next scene, he's making out with his girlfriend on the couch, and he starts to stop, and I'm thinking, oh, here it comes. I've realized I'm gay, was what I thought was going to come out of his mouth. And he's like, I think we shouldn't have sex because one of us might be the killer.
Which, like,
valid. She does not take it well, but why should she? But yeah, I thought they were fucking delightful. I think the one that I had the biggest, like, I'm not too sure, is Mickey Madison, who's playing Amber. And I think they kept her a little too mysterious.
Well, because you don't get a whole lot of time with her.
Yeah.
The only kind of real character arc she has is that she's very suspicious of everyone, or at least she acts like she's very suspicious of everyone, particularly Sam, our protagonist, who has sort of left town at some point and was kind of like a town troublemaker, and and she was perceived as having abandoned Tara, who is Jessica Ortega. She's the girl who's attacked at the beginning of the movie, and Sam returns to town after that happens.
Yeah. And I think if you had added maybe 5 more minutes with her mingling with that group, it might have sold it a little bit more. But honestly, every single one of these movies is kind of, because it's a little, I don't think it's as packed as Scream 4 is in terms of characters.
No.
Scream 4 feels like it has a bit too many characters for the size of bag it's all contained in. And I'm sure that some of that is probably the Weinsteins meddling with the fucking thing. Like, at least now, it doesn't feel like some outside source is meddling with what the movie should be. That I think that's a very good saving grace for it. And then, so yeah, someone's going to get lost in the mix when you add Sidney and Gale and Dewey back into it, but they're reasonably well integrated into the plot. It does not feel at all superfluous, and they don't waste any time with any rivalries or old baggage. None of that really seems to weigh the movie itself down.
Well, for me, one of the things that I have always, one of the reasons I've always held the Scream movies in higher regard than other horror franchises is that all of these people feel like very real people, and their friendships feel real. And I think even when you've got a little bit of the infighting and the sniping, it still feels genuine. It doesn't just feel like, okay, well, we have to have person A, B, and C, in the same room with person D, E, and F, and then, just have them all be complete and total assholes to each other, so that the audience is, pretty happy and relieved when they're finally killed off. None of the characters in the Scream movies, except for obviously the killers, oh, thank God that character's dead. They were the worst.
Right. Yeah.
I mean, even Randy, as obnoxious as his character was so much of an audience surrogate that you can't help thinking, oh, they had to kill him.
Yeah.
He had so much time. He still had a chance to figure out how insufferable he was being.
And try to do something different. Yeah, there's a good balance to everything, and they managed to find a core to Mary Shelton's Hicks character that it's obvious it's not afforded in Scream 4. She's just like a random comic relief obstacle in that film, and in here she feels pretty real. She is now a sheriff and a mom, and she feels real. She's not a cartoon. That's kind of her point in Scream 4. She's everyone on the force under Dewey's a little cartoonish, and here they kind of strip that away, I think, to the movie's benefit.
Right. Yeah. I would agree with you there.
So we learned that Sam eventually, because she found diaries in the attic, that she was the love child of not Stu but Billy and her mom, and when she confronts her mom about it, she is not aware that her father is still in the house, and he overhears this and he leaves immediately. And so she is carrying with her the guilt of destroying, in her mind, this marriage, which is not really a fault of her own because she was not the one who was lying. But you can sort of feel like what was going on in this town in 1996, Gina?
Oh no!
Woodsboro 1996 had a lot of sexual problems.
People be fucking too much.
I mean, maybe the moral majority was right. People be fucking too much in Woodsboro, California.
Put around the town flag. Woodsboro, we fuck too much.
Be fucking too much since 1996.
Because man, like everything, all the problems seem to stem from people just not being able to keep it in their pants in various manners.
Yes, the small town sexual proclivities have just caused a lot of strife over the years. But I suppose in some ways, such as life, just without all the stabbing, it always ends up in stabbing in Woodsboro. It doesn't always end up in stabbing everywhere else.
Yeah, that's you have too much fucking and not enough anger management classes.
And a lot of lies and too many closets that are oddly constructed so that you can use them to stop the door into your bedroom. Why do they not go into the garage? Why do they decide to go into the basement for beer? Why don't they go into the garage?
I don't know.
I just like, why not go into the garage, everybody? It's the same refrigerator. You're telling me somebody hauled that refrigerator from the garage down to the basement? Oh, that's a bad move. The Freemans, when you bought that house from the Mockers. I saw this movie with 6 people, one of whom was my wife. So there wasn't a lot of audience reaction in mine. I think I had the most audience reaction. I was laughing. I was gasping when people got knives through their fucking hands. Again, radio silence guys love hand violence.
I saw it actually at a press screening, and there was not a lot of people in it. We got one of the later ones, and the very long drawn out scene where just after Deputy Judy is killed in broad daylight. Let's on her front lawn.
On her front lawn. Where are people? Do they live in an it town where people are like, listen, a lot of shit happens on these streets. I'll be inside. Thank you very much.
Her son, who is named Wes, wink.
Yeah.
We don't know who Wes's father is. It's never explained.
No.
But presumably he would have had to have been around during the events of Scream 4 because he's about 18 here.
Yes.
And Scream 4 was in 2011.
Yes, correct.
But Deputy Judy was too busy making 11 bars to try to woo Sheriff Dewey to mention that she has a child at home.
Right. Well, some people are single moms, that stuff happens. So that didn't throw me quite as much. But yes, I considered that for a second.
But they take as sort of what I would describe as a Family Guy approach to this scene in which Wes is eventually killed, in which it's so drawn out that it stops being funny and then becomes funny again.
Yeah. And whoever's doing the music is playing a distinct part because it's always like ramp, 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 closed door. Nothing's there.
It's like, nope, he's not there. But then when it does happen, it's so brutal that it's like, oh my God, I'm sorry, I didn't mean to laugh.
Oh my God, it is so brutal.
Side of the neck.
Oh man. And a good use of practical plus digital. It really works out. Yeah. Oh man, I thought the gore in this was pretty fucking fantastic. Right. The franchise.
It didn't quite top 4 because 4 still had actual human innards laying out. I was a little terrified. I cringed and kind of hid my eyes because I thought that basically Dewey's guts were going to fall all over his feet. I'm like, please, no, come on. Give this man some dignity. But no, it didn't quite go that far.
No, he does get it coming and going, though.
It's brutal, but at least they spared us from having to see his intestines hanging out or anything like that.
Yeah. Oh, man. I do like Radio Silence's sort of aesthetic that, and I guess this is true really for the Scream franchise. Like you can take a lot of punishment and still be ticking, and that certainly happens to Tara. And then she has one of those great, it's almost like they're like, Halloween 2 had moments, but what if someone who had really sustained this damage tried to get away? And she is working hard to get away, and she is simply not equipped.
That hand injury opening up while she's like trying to push herself in the wheelchair. I felt that shit.
Oh my God. It's really tough.
And again, this girl is so tiny that I don't know why Ghostface doesn't just like pick her up and fling her through a window. Honestly, she's like this little child person. Right. She's so small.
Of the 2 things that would be required for a good Scream movie, we only get one of them. We get some color blocking. We do not get news van violence.
We don't get, you're right. We don't.
We don't get news van violence. So that's a zag, I'm assuming on purpose, because there's just no one is coming with it. Because when Sidney and Gale finally team up, they're like, tonight we just murder some motherfuckers. They're done. They don't care. They're through with this. Every time we get involved with one another, there's 2 motherfuckers we end up having to kill. Let's just get her done tonight. And I really enjoyed that attitude.
Yeah.
Oh man alive. Who haven't we talked about here? I don't know that Dylan's really worked out other than being maybe the most have you considered my penis of the group for the most part, and no one is considering his penis. No. With the possible exception of Chad, he might be. We don't know. Chad might be swinging in a couple different directions, and good for him. I doubt he'll strike out anytime soon.
He's another one though that Tara at the end of the movie, like, wait, he's still alive?
Right. Yeah. I mean, you see the amount of blood coming out of his leg, and you're like, he's not lasting a long time.
That, and they like tackle him and like stab him a bunch of times, like in the
Yeah.
back, and and then Mindy's being taken out on a stretcher at the end. He's just there, like giving a thumbs up. I'm like, dude, what?
That was a surprise to me. It was not a surprise that Mindy lived, but when Chad was also alive, I'm like, what is going on with the Meeks bloodline? I found that very surprising, but I think it's okay. Like if you were to continue this on, right? You now have Sam, Tara, Chad, and Mindy to carry things on. You wouldn't necessarily need to bring back Sidney Prescott or Gale into the mix, in my mind.
No, I don't think you do. I mean, again, there's no reason for Sidney. I mean, Gale sort of, because she still loves to track down a good story, but Sidney has moved on. She seems to be doing pretty well enough that she is evidently now married, has children. I mean, we don't really get a sense of that part of her life very much, but she's obviously stable enough to have found some sense of peace in her life. Mm-hmm. So there's no reason for her to keep coming back for this.
Yes. And I think it found a out in terms of having to constantly connect it back to Sidney, that you could manipulate things in a direction where it wouldn't have to be about her any longer, and would free her up, and you could terrorize Sam and Tara a lot more than you're already seeing, perhaps. Like, I would love for this to go into the Cult of Chucky direction, where Sam might be in an institutional situation and find herself trying to figure out who amongst her is a Ghostface killer in that situation. I don't know. There's a lot of, it frees it up a little bit, that you could try to do some different things while still keeping it Scream. That would allow Neve Campbell to not have to show up anymore. Not that I dislike her presence anymore, but you kind of do want some amount of peace for this woman. She deserves it.
Right. And again, everybody's storyline comes to a natural end. Yeah. And I wouldn't want to see her become like a Laurie Strode, where she's just so traumatized by this experience that she just lives and breathes this 24 hours a day.
Right. Yeah. Yeah. It's just like, I agree with you. There's a natural, well-worn conclusion to things here that give it a nice cap point. That also allows it to maybe go off in with a slightly other group. I don't know that. I think it did well, for certain. And I don't think this is one of those movies that cost, $100 million to make. Obviously, this was a pretty tight thing. It probably made its budget back on its first weekend. So would it have done better without the Omicron wave? Undoubtedly.
Oh,
I feel like undoubtedly. Yeah. This definitely could have pulled it probably could have pulled a 50 or 60 in a non-Omicron, is my guess.
Yeah, I think so. I think so. I think there's a built-in audience for it. And I think that I'm pretty certain that the younger actors in this movie are more familiar to young people than they are to us. Like I said, the only person I knew of was Jasmin Savoy Brown. And I don't even know if I even knew she was in it until I saw her. Then I pulled a Leo DiCaprio. Hey, I know who that is. It's Evie from The Leftovers. Yay!
I knew Melissa Barrera because I had worked on promoting Vita, which is on Stars. And then I knew that I'd seen her in The Heights when we showed Ollie The Heights. So I'm like, oh, her. So yeah, I was like, what the fuck are people talking about? Wouldn't that really threw me for a fucking loop. To talk about rescuing someone's sort of scary movie reputation. Kyle Gallner is unrecognizable to a certain degree in this role. Like you would never think, oh, there's that kid from that terrible Nightmare on Elm Street reboot. Or remake. He's very sleazy in this. When you hear that he's related to Stu, you're like, yeah, that fits. This feels a piece. And I think I have to give it up to Roger Jackson here. That opening scene is the most casual I've ever heard Ghostface used in any of the movies. That voice is so iconic. And now there's like a voice filter on TikTok where you can sound like him too. So I hear him a lot now, but he's, the Ghostface here is like pulling one over on Tara and like coming off like, oh, I'm in the same AA group as your mom, but I can't say it out loud. And there's some real levels to the voice acting that he's doing in that scene that he's not usually called upon to do. And I found it refreshing.
Oh yeah. Like he did kind of sound like, nice, but vaguely creepy in a way you can't put your finger on. Parent's friend on the phone for a little while. Like you're trying to, ingratiate himself to, the potential romantic partner's kid.
Yeah. And I felt like in Scream 4, he sounded a little too grizzled. There's a little too much grizzle to it, where he sounded a little old. And he's like, well, he's supposed to be this unknowable thing where you instantly hear it. It's iconic, but you don't really have a picture of who he is. And in that is like, oh, that's a dude that maybe needs to drink more water. Yeah. And here he sounded fresh as a daisy. That might have been a choice.
He took a nice steam before he recorded.
Yeah. He's been taking care of his instrument. Like, yes, there's a lot of whiskey involved, but it's a neater whiskey. It's not blended, because blended whiskey is crap. Who haven't we talked about? I think, the only one who's kind of an outlier here is Liv, played by Sonia Amar, who's a striking young woman. And she's kind of saddled with the boring, sexy person.
Yeah, she doesn't get much to do. Although I guess I'll spoil my Choose Your Own Deathventure. She'd be the way I'd want to go out, because she is the fastest, and it happens so fast. I literally don't think she even knows what hit her.
No. She does not know that she is gone when she has left this early point. She turns around and she's in the pearly gates or whatever the fuck. Like she moved on very, very quickly.
We haven't really talked about Wes much.
Yeah, I mean, he is the closest we get to "Have you considered my penis" of any of the characters.
Is he though? I don't think so.
He's not as actively bad about it. It's talked about after the fact. We don't really see it.
He's mostly very briefly presented as a red herring, but yes. it seems a little like, nah, not him.
Right. His sequence has there's a lot of levels to it. I do like his and Deputy Judy's relationship. She's very protective of him. Yeah, a lot. Again, there's a reality to her that's an interesting elevation of how we saw her in 4. Not that she it's weird. It's a weird thing. We said it when we talked about 4. That's a weird character to sort of like cause problems in a marriage. That like, how does this help? It's sort of, she's a symptom in a sense, but really is not an active participant in what's going on. he's an interesting sort of, you assume that he's not the killer. And I think that's one of the elements of Scream, because they need to populate with people who will die. And so he always seems a little bit like a red shirt in this.
Yeah, well, yeah. Well, let me ask you something. Who
Sure.
when you were watching it, who did you think it was, or were you trying not to think that far ahead?
I was trying not to think that. I was allowing the movie to just tell me what it was, and I was also highly considering the idea that it wasn't anybody anyone knew. And they would take off the ghost face mask and they're like, who the fuck are you? And you're like, that's the thing. You don't know me. None of you know me. And
well, yeah, that's the funny thing of the poster that came out was the tagline of the poster was "The killer is on this poster." Yeah. And it's got one of those, now iconic for Scream posters where it has all the major characters sort of lined up, but then kind of looming behind them is Ghostface. So it's like, yeah, there he is.
And that's just one of them.
So if they did that, that poster still would have been correct.
True. So now I think we need to tackle whether or not we felt that the film's meta commentary, that toxic fandom is that this is the end game here of toxic fandom, that sooner or later someone is going to take their love of scary movies too far. Oh, wait a second. That's the point of the first one. It's all the same fucking thing. I don't want to, oh, God damn it. As soon as I took my fucking filters off this afternoon, wouldn't you know it, a bunch of people complain like, oh, they're coming after fandom. Like, motherfucker, they've been coming after the fandom since the first movie. What franchise have you been watching?
Well, yeah, but just this time they actually have like parodies of, the people who have like the 3-hour long videos on YouTube breaking the movie down bit by bit, complaining about every aspect of it and so-called plot holes. It's more, I think the calling out is much more specific now.
Yeah.
Whereas, in the first movie, it was more of a general, a lot of crazy people like these movies. Now we're actually talking about a specific kind of person.
Right.
And here we are parodying them.
Yes. When Amber goes, I was radicalized online.
I love that she and Richie met on Reddit. Did you catch that? Did you catch that throwaway line? Yeah.
Oh, man.
I mean, people would say, "Oh, it's a little over the top," and it's like, is it though?
Is it? If that is over the top, then so is Scream 1, so is Scream 2, so is Scream 3, and so is Scream 4. It's not like they suddenly jumped a shark. The point of these movies is, see how I jumped the shark? Like, it's just, I'm sorry. That is part and parcel of what Scream has always been, because it is a movie franchise in which people are aware of slasher tropes and they talk about it and they discuss it. And some people are, more into it than others, but it's always a piece of the conversation. This is not new. It's just that people have decided to get all up in their butt and deep into their feelings about this stuff now. And then it's a big fucking problem. It's like the same thing with Matrix Resurrections, a movie that made me cry no less than 3 fucking times.
I was just going to say, after the embarrassment of the rise of Skywalker, and particularly Ghostbusters Afterlife, please give me more movies in which filmmakers call out certain kinds of toxic fans. Please. Yes. I loved it. It makes me cheer. Please call out the absolute inanity of well, why can't you do something, fresh and interesting with these characters? And then when they do, well, no, not like that.
Exactly. 100%. Over and over and over again. We go down the same road. And some person who might not be that familiar with us might say, well, didn't you two didn't enjoy Halloween Kills as much because it did try to do something different. That's not my complaint. My complaint is the something different that it tried to do was not necessarily my cup of tea, but I'm also not going to ever threaten the lives of someone who acted in it or made the movie because I somehow own this movie franchise. Like, fuck you, fuck all of this. You need to get out of your own goddamn head.
Right.
Like, this stuff is supposed to be fun.
I'm not gonna, harass people online for liking a movie that I didn't like.
Exactly.
Because that's something that crazy people do. And I know we're not supposed to use the word crazy anymore, but that is what crazy people do.
It's not that their love of scary movies has gone too far. They don't actually love them.
No.
They hate them. It's a love that has curdled. You want to stalk your favorite movies. You want to own them and only allow them to do the things you feel they're allowed to do.
That's what I was going to say. You want these movies to exist solely for you.
Yes.
And not to include women, not to include people of color, not to include queer people, only for you.
Yes. I only want to see myself reflected in this. And I don't, quite frankly. I think a lot of people don't get to see themselves reflected, and it's happening a lot more now. And you're getting these interesting performances by all these different actors. They're all gorgeous, right? Because they're in a fucking movie. They're all interesting to watch. They're funny. There's pathos to them. You like to watch what's happening to them. And it's not taking anything away from me. It's not taking anything away from anybody. If you don't love a movie, this is really okay. There are worse sins in this world. And if you don't love a particular entry of a movie, this is also, it is an emotional reaction you're having to a film, if that's positive or negative. It's when you take those emotions and you push beyond the normal boundaries to involve yourself in their narrative. You have gone too far, and you need to take a step back and understand your place in this. You are an audience member. If a critic doesn't like the thing that you like or dislike something that you liked, they are giving their emotional and logistical critique of a piece of art. And you can read that and go, I don't agree. Because I read about 3 or 4 reviews of this film, and my takeaway was like, it's not really the movie that I saw or the reaction that I had. So peace out. And that's as far as it went. That's as far as it ever needs to go.
Well, I'll tell you, just strictly out of spite, not even because I think she's a great actor, but if Jasmin Savoy Brown was to become the kind of quote unquote new Sidney, if they're gonna make more of these, and they probably will, I would love that. I would love that because I know other people are gonna hate it. But because again, she's Black, she's queer. Most of the characters she plays are queer. I think that is her general preference, from what I understand. So she makes out with a girl in this movie, which is probably a Scream first, and
a Scream movie that again believes that sex exists in the world is not a bad thing. Again, I found this a pleasant throwback, an interesting swerve on the trend to sort of, I don't know, sex doesn't belong in every movie, but I like kissing. So if people are going to kiss, like, I'm all fucking for it. As many people can kiss as possible, great. Because that's what life is. Life has people who kiss. Like, that's fun. That's some fun shit to do. So I'm right there with you. They can take any of these characters who survived and sort of push along with them and have them intersect or show up minorly or not at all, or weave different stories between all of them. There are places to go here that allow a separation point, that allow it to move on from from the emotional torture of Sidney Prescott, because we're now freed of her mother's component in this. Like someone else was a shitty parent to a character.
Well, it's interesting to point out, and I think this is probably a very deliberate choice on the filmmaker's part, is that of the younger group of people, all the white characters are either victims or villains.
Yes.
Like not a single white member of the group makes it to the end of the movie, which I think is pretty daring considering what horror fans are like. Here's a surprise. Horror fans aren't nearly as inclusive as they like to say they are on Twitter.
Yeah.
I'm saying something very controversial for being part of horror Twitter, but it's a lot of horse shit.
Yes. And I also feel like there's a lot of people who, and we talked about them again, there's that t-shirt horror crowd who's like, my love of horror is something I present. I'm a horror lover. And then they never quite seem to like anything new or different or interesting, or they don't like. They hate the thing they supposedly love, and then they harass everyone else about it. This is newsflash. You don't love horror. You think you do. You loved horror. You've fallen out of love of horror. And now you're that asshole ex-boyfriend who's still hanging the fuck around, trying to be involved in a love affair you're not having anymore. Just find something else, man. We all do it at some point.
Well, it's that, and it's a lot of people who, were bullied when they were kids and made to feel like weirdos for the things that they liked. And even despite, being grown-ups and, getting over that kind of thing as you're supposed to after a point and finding community, you still feel like you need to be, windmilling punches in every direction because you still feel like, you're the little guy pushing back against, a bigger person picking on you, making you feel small and like you don't belong. So what do you do in that situation? You punch down.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Oh boy. I tell you, it seems like we end up having this conversation like 3 times a year.
But it's interesting to me. I really appreciate that filmmakers are taking notice of this and addressing it for the cancer in the genre that it is.
Yes. I think for a long time there was a mystery involved to a filmmaker's intent. And because of that mystery, people would be able to insert their own sort of meanings. And listen, we did this a lot. We did with Freddy, with Feel Good Freddy, that he would help people to death, and with Jason Voorhees and trying to figure out who he was as a character. That's all fun. But there's also an element where people view their idea of a franchise or type of movie, and they just insert themselves too much into it to the point where it's simply not healthy. And I do like this new wave of people going, here's the intent of this, so that you might not necessarily be confused, because some people are. So we're going to spell it out a little bit for you so that you're not surprised when you keep hearing this over and over again. This is the intent of this piece of art. So yeah, hopefully that while that might be alienating to some, I think those people were always going to be alienated from this type of movie, despite their supposed love of it.
Well, yeah, because it's a movie that is not made with them, with 100% of them in mind.
And yet I feel like a lot of reviews sort of felt like its only existence is to win those fans over. And I'm like, no, I really don't feel like that. I feel like they were telling a familiar story, and part and parcel of it is for it to be familiar with new types of characters in new situations to bring about a different type of conversation. And that to me does not yell money grab beyond the fact that it's named Scream. You know, that's the money grab component. They thought this will make its money back and a little bit more. And I think it should.
Oh yeah, 100%. I really enjoyed it.
I really enjoyed it as well. Last week we kind of gave our up to the moment rankings. Where would you place 5 in your Scream rankings?
I think I would place it. I think my rankings would now be 1, 2, 5, 4, and 3.
I'm just so weird, Gina. How are? And again, like for me, 1 and 2 are like close to perfect movies, and then 5, 4 are just a millimeter or two below that. I think 5 just steps it up a little bit in terms of the way those suspense sequences work. I think they're kind of clockwork, baby. They were given time, and it also doesn't, they're not trying to zazz it up in any way, shape, or form. They're just playing with the medium, which was something that Craven was doing with his films as well. So it's not a new element. 5 just, I don't know, it just kind of came alive a little bit more. Again, that cast of 4 is another winning group of people for the most part, you know, who've gone on to do interesting work. I'm
gonna slightly, I like this cast more.
Mm-hmm.
I found them to there were a couple characters in 4 that I liked. Like I liked Kirby, who doesn't, but
yeah.
I think I found that these characters for the most part were all genuinely believable, likable people.
Okay. Rather than the heightened Williamson, because that's part and parcel of kind of what he does is he gives everyone a little bit of edge. So you go, maybe they're that type of person. Whereas here, it's that type of person can hide really well.
Right. Exactly.
Yeah. And I think there is a component to that Richie character where he is set up to be the nice guy as a point.
Oh yeah, 100 totally. Yeah, the insisting that he go with her to go see her sister after she's been attacked. I mean, that show honestly, it's probably one of those things where if you watch it, again, you'll see more little hints. But for me, it was okay, there's a reason why they want to emphasize that he's not familiar with this case or these movies or anything.
Yeah. For 100%, Richie is his actual mask and Ghostface is the real Richie.
Right.
Yeah. So let's play Choose Your Own Deathventure. Now I could not take notes in the theater, so you'll forgive me if I don't.
Let me see if I can remember off the top of my head.
Okay.
I believe the guy at the bar,
Vince.
Kyle Gallner, he got his throat slashed.
Throat slashed and some he gets an initial neck stabbing to start, and then some additional.
And then you've got Deputy Judy. She's stabbed to death on her front lawn in broad daylight.
Broad fucking daylight.
You've got Wes, who gets a knife through the neck, which seems to take absolutely fucking forever. So you got to be a total sicko to take that one.
Right.
And then I think Dewey's the next one.
Well, no, you have there's a sheriff's deputy on that floor.
Oh,
we think she's left alone, but she actually finds him and then looks to see if he has his gun.
His neck is slashed.
Yeah.
Dewey gets a knife to the back and the sternum at the same time.
Yeah, kind of coming and going. No, all exits is the way that Dewey goes out.
You've got then you've got the party. And so you've got Liv is shot in the head.
Yes.
You've got I guess everybody else survives after that point. Well, except for the killers, obviously.
Right. Now I think we're down to the killers.
You've got how did Richie ultimately die? Was he shot? No.
He is stabbed so many times.
Right. Yeah, Sam kind of just goes like goes ham on him and stabs him about 50 times. Yeah. And then you've got Amber, who was first burned and then shot. Which is interesting because this actress seems to play a type, because she's also
a killer who gets burned and shot.
She's also in Once Upon a Time in America, Once Upon a Time in Hollywood, sorry. And she is basically flamethrown to death.
Yeah.
In a scene that is so over the top, you kind of can't help laughing, and you sort of hate yourself a little bit afterwards.
You do, but also I do like Sidney and Gale's reaction to it. They're like, oh, wow, okay, that's a lot more than we had intended. And she comes back from it. She ultimately gets shot.
She kind of looks like a Chucky doll that has been burned.
Exactly. Again, a complete compliment. One of the greatest things we have going on is an ongoing greatness of Chucky content. So, like, if you're gonna make a reference, make it a good one.
So yeah, typically of the Scream movies, you mostly got a lot of stabbings and slashings.
Yeah,
they don't get Ghostface doesn't usually get too creative.
Not really. The most creativity generally comes when someone gets thrown somewhere or crushed by something. And I think the closest that this movie really comes to that is Amber's death. Yeah. Are you going with Liv?
Yeah, like I said, she has no idea what happens. She gets shot in the head, and that's it for her.
She gets shot mid-sentence. Yeah. Like she's completing that on a different plane of existence. Yeah, 100% going with Liv. Like, that is the way to go of all of these things.
Because nobody dies easy in this.
No, and it's at least consistent with that. And I feel like that is something we've seen a little bit in the Scream movie, certainly with Dewey and whatnot, and certainly killers seem to live through a lot of stuff. So it's consistent within the universe. It's not exactly new. But yeah, people take a fair amount of damage and keep on ticking in this bad boy.
Not so much as Tara. Holy shit.
Yeah. She's really upset that this did not go the way they thought it would. And I enjoyed Gale's denouement about it. Like, no, fuck these people. Let them die in anonymity.
I fully expected like Tara's head to be on a robot body in the next movie.
Yeah. And I'm glad this didn't go supernatural. There's a lot of bad places this could have gone, and this is just one of the best. There's panache to it. It's a fun fucking watch.
It is. It's very old school fun and scary at the same time.
Yes, I found it scary. Like, I was on the edge of my seat. Like, I was really engaged in this. This got me. And if it didn't get you, hey, such is life. There are worse things than a movie not working for you. But we enjoyed the shit out of it. Now, before we get on to plugs, we should note we've had a slight explosion when it comes to the Patreon end of our business. Now, on Patreon, we give you 2 extra shows a month if you're at the $5 and higher level. You get a Halloween movie commentary. That's where we're covering Halloween, is over on Patreon. You asked for it, and now you're getting it in movie form. You can watch along with us. And of course, in February, we will have a Halloween 5, and in January, it's Halloween 4. That's how numbers work. I just remembered. But we have new patrons. And do we know who they are, Gina?
Yeah. So we've got a nice little spike. Like I said on Twitter, I guess people really want to hear you talk about Southern California geography.
Yeah.
And me talking about Dr. Loomis's magic bullet pocket.
Sure.
But we just want to thank Anlise, JJ, Selena, Stephen, Kate raised their monthly pledge, which is nice. We have Isaac, and
Awesome.
and just today we got Tom. So thank you so much.
Right. Cool.
That's just in the past 2 weeks.
Excellent. And of course, if you're on the $10 level, every other month you choose the movie that we cover. And in January, Philippe, who designed our amazing Choose Your Own Deathventure t-shirt, which is on TeePublic right now, he gave us a "Let's Scare Jessica to Death" in quotes. Those quotes are there for a reason. And what a fun little movie and a fun discussion about it. So find us there. Gina, where else can people find you on these here internets?
I write about movies and television at the Spool. You can find my full review of Scream there. And I will be covering this year's Sundance Festival. And I am on Twitter and Instagram under Gina Does Things. GENA Does Things.
Do it today, people. Check it out. You can find us on all the socials. We're on Twitter and Facebook and Instagram. We're on Letterboxd, where you can see what's in the bullpen coming up. And folks, this is the end of season 3. We started not knowing exactly what it was going to be, and then we discovered it along the way. We had some amazing guests to help us talk about all these things. We started Dish by Dish, which will be coming back in the spring. And season 4, here we go, people. This is the announcement you're waiting for. What franchise are we going to do? Tell you what, fuck it. Let's do 2 franchises. How do you like them apples? First off, we're going to go with the granddaddy, something that Gina and I love, and that is the Alien franchise. So we're going to start off with Alien with a great guest. And will we get into the latter day Alien franchise? Who can say? Let's take Alien first and see where it goes. But we're not done there, because after Alien, we're going to take a trip and things are going to go badly. And even though we've survived, we might not live to see the end of Final Destination. That's right. We're going to take on the Final Destination franchise all the way through. And wouldn't you know it, they announced a new fucking Final Destination film. So, and an Alien TV series. So these franchises will go on. So we're going to take those one after the other and do some fill-ins in between, so we don't, overstay our welcome. And of course, this March is the return of a very unpopular segment, but we like to do it. It's called Animal Attacks April. And we are going to take on a number of truly one-of-a-kind motion pictures, including the much-demanded Jaws 3D. That's right. If you have a silly t-shirt inside of SeaWorld, we're going to read it out loud, so you will know about it.
I can't wait.
And we will be completing After Dark for this year before Animal Attacks April. So then after that, the return of Dish by Dish for season 3 of Hannibal. So there's a lot to look forward to. Tell your friends, tell your family, tell your mortal enemies. They all need to know about Kill by Kill, because we're not giving up the ghost here anytime soon. We are giving up the ghost face. R.I.P.D. Scream franchise for now. So for myself and for Gina, bye-bye, everybody.
Bye.
Oh, the body count will continue. You know that shit.